The best triathletes across the ages. Whew. This is going to be a tricky one. Now, although our sport of triathlon is a remarkably young one in the grand scheme of things, there is by no means a shortage of athletes that have had a huge impact on it within that short space of time. But here's the tricky thing. Who are the best, if that is even a title? Well, I thought I'd have a little bit of fun today and try and at least narrow that list down, give some of my opinions, and well, at least just have some fun looking back at some of those incredible athletes. Okay, let's start by winding the clocks back to the earliest era of triathlon. Although we had the first and the original triathlon in the mid-70s and the first Ironman Hawaii in 78, it wasn't until the early 80s where things really kicked off. And that's where the Big Four emerged, and we had more than a decade of fierce racing. So who were the Big Four? Well, firstly, there are fewer names more recognisable in the world of triathlon than Dave Scott. And for a good reason. He won his first Hawaii title in 1980 and posted the first sub 10-hour time. And then from 1982 through to 1987, he was unbeaten on the Big Island, earning himself the nickname The Man. And along the way, he had some pretty fierce battles with some other members of the Big Four, Scott Tinley and Scott Molina. And Tinley won his first Hawaii in the February of 1982, and then again in 85 when Dave Scott boycotted due to prize money, and Scott Molina took his first win in 88. But who completes the list of four? Well, none other than Marc "The Grip" Allen, of course. Marc and Dave were inseparable through the 1989 Hawaii event, which is now famously known as the Iron War. It was Marc Allen, though, that was finally victorious after 7 attempts and ending the reign of Dave Scott, and also smashing his course record in the process. Well, he went on to dominate every Hawaii bar one until 1995, equaling Scott's tally of 6 wins, firmly cementing his place in history. But it's his wins and achievements away from Kona that really separates him from the rest of them during that era. He won the inaugural ITU World Champs in 89 and was unbeaten in the Nice International Long Course Triathlon 10 times. And not to mention, he had a win rate of over 90% throughout his entire career across all distances. Virtually unbeaten, which is just remarkable. And incredible feats of dominance were by no means limited to just the men's racing on Kona during this era. In 1986, Paul and newby-fraser sliced half an hour off the previous course record in Hawaii, which marked the first of a staggering 8 wins on the Big Island over the next decade, and actually managing to drop that record down below 9 hours in 1992, a feat that wasn't again repeated for another 17 years by a certain and equally as impressive Chrissie Wellington, but we'll get on to her in just a moment. Now, for Paula, she well and truly earned the nickname of Queen of Kona, but much like Dave Scott, she did race over other distances, but very much her focus was centred around the Ironman distance. Well, flipping back to the men, and it was Greg Welch that ended Marc Allen's unbeatable run in the 90s, and despite Greg Welch being the Ironman World Champion in 94 and the ITU World Champion in 1990, unfortunately, selection evaded him for the Olympic Games in his hometown of Sydney, as it did for fellow young Aussie Chris McCormack, who was also ITU World Champion from 1997, but unfortunately failed to make that debut at the Olympic Games in Sydney in 2000. Well, this forced Macca to turn his career towards the Ironman distance that throughout the 2000s, he dominated everywhere he raced, except for the Big Island. Finally, though, he took that elusive win in 2007 and repeated it again in 2010, adding himself to that very elite doubles club, taking the Ironman World Championship and ITU World Championship wins. And it wasn't just the Aussie men doubling up. Step forwards Michaeli Jones, who is the double winner of the ITU World Championships from 1992 and 1993. She was also a hot favourite for the Sydney Olympic Games. She held the lead deep into the race, but unfortunately had to settle for still a very impressive silver medal. From there, she then stepped up to the Ironman distance and took the win at the Ironman World Championships in 2006 on the Big Island. And as such, makes her the only athlete to ever held the Ironman World Championship title, the ITU World Championship title, and an Olympic medal, which has surely got to make her one of the very best athletes of all time. And whilst we're talking about great Australian athletes, we cannot forget Emma Snowsill. She was absolutely dominant throughout the 2000s with 3 ITU World Championship wins, a win in the Commonwealth Games, and a gold from the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games. Unfortunately though, selection saw her out of the next 2 Olympic Games in Athens and London, and as such, she retired from the sport before stepping up to the Ironman distance, but we can only speculate she would probably have been pretty good there too. But whilst on the subject of comparing athletes from the same nation, let's move to the UK. Now, if you were following ITU racing during the 90s, the name Simon Lessing will probably be quite familiar to you. He won 4 ITU world titles and crucially, spanning the change from non-drafting to drafting, which is something a lot of other athletes of that era really struggled with. But Simon lapped it up, and as such, he was the favourite for the Sydney Olympic Games, although unfortunately, it seems he buckled a bit under the pressure. However, when we're discussing Simon Lessing, invariably connections are made with another British athlete, Alistair Brownlee. And yeah, they do compare in so many ways. When in their prime, they are utterly dominant over the short course distance, and quite often both of them leading from gun to tape. Alistair, though, is without a doubt one of the greatest ever short course athletes we've ever seen. He's a double Olympic champion, double world champion, Commonwealth champion, amongst many other impressive results. He has, however, already started shifting his career towards long distance with 2 silver medals from the 70.3 World Championships, as well as actually having one of the fastest ever Ironman times out there. And well, I'd hazard a guess he will be trying to add a Hawaii title to his race CV too. I mean, I certainly wouldn't bet against it. We're now moving back to Ironman, and incredibly, just 3 women dominated and secured pretty much all the Kona titles between 1998 and 2014. Now, Natasha Badman became the first European to win the Ironman World Championships in 1998, and then went on a streak of 6 wins through until 2005. Now, she wasn't the strongest of swimmers, but her unrivaled power on the bike set her up time and time again to dominate the event. Unfortunately though, a bike crash in 2007 prevented her from a potential battle with a new rookie to the sport who went on to become a superstar, Chrissie Wellington. Now, Chrissie actually went on to retire just 5 years later, but did so undefeated over the Ironman distance, and also with 4 Kona wins to her name. She also set the fastest ever iron distance time in history that still stands today at a time of 8 hours and 18 minutes. Now, neither Badman or Wellington raced over the ITU short course distance, but Mirinda Carfrae did come from that background, making the step up via an Ironman 70.3 world title and taking her first of 3 Kona titles in 2010, utilising her blistering marathon run splits on every occasion. And then we have Craig Alexander, almost a mirror image of Mirinda Carfrae on the men's side. He also had a relatively successful ITU career before amassing 3 Kona titles over the course of 4 years, plus 2 70.3 titles. In doing so, he set a new Kona course record. He was the oldest ever competitor to win the Ironman Hawaii race, plus he was the first ever to win the Ironman World Championships plus the Ironman 70.3 World Championships in the same year in 2011. And then this was repeated again the very next year by Leander Cave. She was already the ITU short course and long course world champion from 2002 and 2007, but made herself a 4-time world champion by adding the Ironman 70.3 and Ironman World Championship titles to her name in 2012. And let's not forget, she's also a medalist from the Commonwealth Games too. And of course, we can't forget Simon Whitfield, the Olympic champion, Commonwealth champion, and narrowly missed out on a 2nd gold medal at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. But just like Emma Snowsill, he retired soon after that before stepping up to a long course career. And then of course we have Javier Gomez. It'd be hard to describe this Spaniard as anything other than perhaps the most versatile athlete of this era. He has 6 ITU short and long course titles, 2 70.3 world titles, even an Xterra world title, and let's not forget also a silver from the London Olympic Games. The only thing missing is a Kona title. Okay, I think it's time I round this out and finish off my list. And I'm going to bring in two big heavyweights to finish this one. Of current times, we've got Daniela Ryf, who admittedly began as a slightly slower burning star. By no means was her ITU career poor. She won 8 World Cups, she went to 2 Olympic Games, but unquestionably, her mark has been made over the longer Ironman distance. She has won 5 Ironman 70.3 World Championships. She's won 4 successive Ironman World Championships and has the fastest time over on the Big Island. I think those statistics speak for themselves really. Then of course we have Jan Frodeno. And he also may not have won prolifically over his ITU career. He hasn't won an ITU World Championships. However, he has won the Olympic Games, which I think counts for a lot really. But much like Ryf, it is over the longer distances that he has unquestionably stamped his mark and strikes fear in most athletes. He has won 5 world titles over the Ironman and Ironman 70.3 distance, and last year set a staggering new Kona course record of 7 hours and 51 minutes, and he really doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. Well, I hope you have enjoyed today's video. Like I say, I have tried to whittle it down as best as possible, and I know we have missed out some pretty big names as well. So yeah, give them some love in the comment section below. I would love to have included them all, but there just isn't enough time today. I could go on forever. If you have enjoyed today's video, please do give it a like, and don't forget to give us a follow over on social media and give us a subscribe just down below.